Thank you so much for joining us for another session of this very special event, The Sacred Wound as a Portal to Your Awakening, where you will learn from incredible teachers, psychologists, academics, spiritual mentors, astrologers, mystics, mediums, shamans, healers, with a world of knowledge, gifts, and talents ready to share with you. My name is Charlie Giles, and I am honoured to be your host for this very powerful wisdom sharing event. Before we begin today's session, I would like to do an acknowledgement to country, which is an Australian Aboriginal custom for when two or more people come together. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we are meeting on today and thank them for their continued custodianship of the many lands, seas and waters that we all have between us. I would also like to acknowledge the elders, past, present and emerging, and thank them for their guidance and wisdom that they continuously provide for us. Thank you. Today's session, we are talking to a very special guest, the lovely Dr. Tayria Ward. Tayria lives in Asheville, North Carolina, where she has a private practice offering dream analysis, psychological and spiritual guidance to clients from all over the world. Tayria has worked intensively with her own and other people's dreams for more than 45 years, and for nearly 30 years has been an avid student of Indigenous ways of knowing and being. Tayria also conducts retreats, vision quests, and teaches online courses, classes, and lectures, and offers readings upon request. Please welcome Dr. Tayria Ward for today's topic, The Call of the Black Sun. Hello, welcome.
Hello, Charlie. It's so lovely to meet you, and I'm very excited about the subject that you're diving into with this summit. I feel like it's so essential.
Oh, me too. And I'm even the topic of yours, I'm ready to dive in. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right. Okay. Well, I have quite a story about it, but I'll just start with the description of what the black sun is about. It's an alchemical term. It may go way earlier than alchemy, than the study of alchemy, but I know it through the study of alchemy. Excuse me. And I'm sorry. Even the black sun's getting caught in my throat. It's like, well, okay, we're going to talk about this now. So my doctorate's in depth psychology. So I was really reading a lot about Jung during those years, of course, of getting that doctorate, and very trained in Jungian thought. And much of his thought is based on his study of alchemy. Jung went through a tremendous process, which he called the encounter with the unconscious. And, a very dark, deep time for him, a real dismantling of many of his previous sense of self and everything else he understood. So his encounter with the unconscious is sort of foundational to all of his work, emerged from there. And so during his studies, he encountered the work of the alchemists in the 15th and 16th century. And these were scientists who were working on trying to transform matter, one matter to another matter. One of the sort of more traditionally spoken of is turning lead into gold. And they went through, they were really experimenting very scientifically with how to transform matter, but they were having these massive emotional and psychological experiences as they went through it. And fortunate for, many to come later, they were good writers and they wrote about their processes. So when Jung was reading the alchemist's work, it was so profound for him because he felt like he was encountering a description of his own psychology of the unconscious and the transformation of our psychology from one thing to another through these deep encounters. And so he studied very deeply the processes of alchemy, and all through his writings, which are massive writings, he references alchemy. So you can find a lot there. but I'll just tell now about 3 basic stages of alchemy. And the first one is what they call the nigredo. And that is the blackening. He called it the black sun, the soul Niger. And the darkening of matter, sort of the melting down of matter, the disintegration, the annihilation. And then the next phase of alchemy of the 3 basic stages is the albedo, and that's the whitening. After all the ashes have been burned down, often there's a white left there. And so the whitening is about, in psychological terms, about the idealization, the ideal that emerges, this sort of really pure spiritual vision that emerges. But the idealization part is hard to live. And so the next process is called the rubedo. And that is the reddening, where you start to pump blood into it. And then you know how to get your feet on the ground, and you know how to bring it into your matter, these deep unconscious processes. So we're just talking today about the nigredo, but that's where I got the term for what I experienced without having any term for it at all, which I can tell you more about. But it's just to know that if you look at it, if you want to explore Jung's work with it, one should look at the Red Book. I just like to mention that, because this was published after his death, and it was his encounter with the unconscious. But the artwork that he did, the drawings of his tremendous visions, and the alchemical work is in this just massively beautiful, powerful volume. And you can read about it there too, but the artwork is amazing. So I just wanted to mention that. He really recorded it so beautifully, this encounter. And it can be very psychoactivating just to look at the artwork. Just, your whole psyche has this activating response. Yeah. And so, what later Jungians and, many psychologists and indigenous people too refer to about the black sun is it's a creative illness. It's the thing that we go through that is massively difficult, a lot of suffering involved, but it's a creative process where the true self, the capital S self, the self that we were before this, this physical matter emerged, is trying now to emerge through what we have developed through our ego and our cultural references and our social references and so forth. So the self wants to come through. And so it's a very creative process, even as it requires a lot of suffering. So that's just just sort of an overview of the black sun and what I'm referring to there. So.
And I love that there are, references and text and resources as well to what you're saying, because I know that for some people, the idea that, if they've only heard of different things like this kind of stuff from spiritual mentors or people who have taken different things and they can't relate it to a theory, mm-hmm. they kind of, not able to grasp hold of it. But for some people, it's very important to have those theories as well. And I can imagine the visions and the visualization of what you're talking about would just be amazing as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because I forgot I was going to show you. This is a book called The Black Sun by Stanton Marlin. And this is a really powerful book. He was one of my professors at Pacifica when I was getting my doctorate. And he really speaks brilliantly about the black sun. So if anybody wants to research it.
Yes, fantastic.
This is a book on alchemy by Marie-Louise von Franz, which is one of Jung's colleagues. So there's a lot of beautiful literature about it if people would like to explore it, because it can really help you, as studying the alchemists helped Jung understand the processes in his own unconscious. It can really be very helpful, healing, activating, moving to just read through some of the works, go past
Absolutely.
the stuff that's
Yeah.
and get to the stuff that really resonates.
Exactly. And everyone learns and accepts things differently, don't they? So yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
So from there, your experience with the Black Sun, is that something that I guess you're ready to share as far as
Yes.
how that relates to yourself?
Yeah, I think it's important to hear people's stories, about
Mm,
how it moves in each of us, somewhat differently and then sometimes so similarly.
right. So
Everybody
people
has
can
their own
resonate.
story, but the similar sort of processes are taking place. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm happy to tell my story. Um, so it it begins, Charlie, when I was a minister in a interfaith community for 20 years. Very involved in the study of all the different religions, and we had a worship body so that we had services and then sacraments and festivals and all that, and I very much loved my work. Then one day I had it's a longer story than I need to tell here, but I had an encounter that was kind of disturbing. And so after I got off the phone from that conversation, I was deeply, deeply stirred by it. And I went and sort of flopped on the bed that was near where my office was. And as I just sort of hit the bed, this image emerged. And what I called it at the time was an eclipse. I saw this black, like deep black hole, and then all of this light coming out of it, just like you see from an eclipse, the light that's just emerging from behind it, but this very black, 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 black disc. And I saw it. It was like my third eye must have just sprung open from the whatever I was experiencing right then. So I saw it in it just so visually, but then I felt this electricity going through my body. I felt like I was being electrocuted. I had no idea what was happening. I had no former reference to anything like this at all. And I felt like I was being electrocuted. And so I was trying to absorb and integrate what had happened. And I had no clue. I had no concept. And so, but later in my doctoral work, I learned about the Black Sun, and I thought, that is what that was. And it's interesting for me then to reflect that right after that vision, and Stan Marlin was my professor, and I told him about it. And when I said, I described the vision to him, his face just got really like concerned. I felt like he was going to cry. He said people who had those kind of visions, he had just spoken in his lecture, often have brain aneurysms, so they go blind or some dramatic, horrible thing happens to them. And so he was so concerned when I told him about it. I'll never forget the look on his face. It was deep compassion and worry for me. But what happened after I had that vision was not that long after, within the year, I resigned from the ministry. I had never seen that coming. I had no idea. I thought it was till death do us part in terms of the vows that I had made and the love that I had for what I did. But then all of a sudden, processes were starting to happen in my unconscious, and the whole thing was just dismantling. And then soon after that, my youngest daughter was diagnosed with diabetes, type 1 diabetes. So here I was with this little child, with a life-threatening illness, and we were sitting on the floor with needles and insulin bottles and crying and trying to figure out what in the world to do. And it was just, I thought resigning from the ministry was horrible, but this was like way worse. And then soon after that came the big one where I discovered, and this was all a matter of a couple of years, I would say. It's what didn't happen boom, boom, boom right after the vision. It was like the processes began, and they began in earnest. So it was happening. But then there was a point when I discovered that I was being lied to by the people that I loved the most in the world. Yeah, I mean, I was just caught. I was in a web of people lying to me, and they had been doing so for a couple of years, and I had not known. I had no clue. And I considered myself sort of a psychic, like I thought I was pretty intuitive. I had no idea. And it shattered me. I can remember the moment that I discovered that, the moment I found out, it was like as if a atom bomb had gone off. It was like, and I didn't even know if I was alive anymore. I thought, I couldn't even feel my flesh anymore. It took a minute to reconstitute after that. And that began, the absolute destruction of everything, every sense of self, like the fact that I could not know this, every sense of love for a universal order, every sense of love for the people in my life that I still loved, but I couldn't imagine, the whole thing was so dramatic. And here's the thing that is so interesting. The day that happened, this was April 15th of 1999. And sometime after that, I was working on my doctorate and looking for an old dream that I'd had in an earlier phase of my life. I keep a dream journal. I've written down my dreams since I was 24. So I have volumes and volumes of dreams. And they're like my scripture. They're my reference points So I was looking for an old dream, and I ran into this dream. This is so amazing. Okay, I'm going to read the dream to you. The dream is, I am completely on fire. Not like big flames lapping around me, but like every single cell on my body has burst into flames. The hottest part of the fire is at the back of my neck, at the base of my brainstem. I am tempted to be terrified by the experience, but I keep repeating over and over, God is my strength and my redeemer. This seems to get me through, and I awaken and I hear the words, God is a consuming fire. So here's what's fascinating, Charlie. This dream occurred on April 15th of 1989. The revelation that actually set me on fire like that was April 15th of 1999, exactly 10 years to the day. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, how does the psyche work with such precision?
Yes.
And the thing that was so valuable about that was it kind of put me in the awareness that this was a soul process, that basically, as much as all of it seemed like it shouldn't have happened, it kind of took me away from blaming anybody. It was like my soul was destined to be disrupted in this kind of way for some purpose. And in 1989, I certainly had no idea what that dream was about. But 1999, then I got it, and I knew that something, it's so beautiful. However we think of guides, angels, just psychic sort of wisdom that took me right to that dream in that time, so that I could understand, okay, this is a big process, and this is something that isn't just circumstantial. This is something that I was always moving toward for some reason. So then I just, and this is what I want to say. I know people have their stories, and so many people go through something similar, some kind of life-threatening illness, a death of someone, or or just a dismantling of the self that they once knew. And the thing that I experienced during the time of my own undoing, or that deep process, was the fact that it's such a lonely period that, I I remember seeing somebody with a black eye and thinking, that person has everybody, like concerned. They're calling in social services. They're, everybody's like knows something's happening to them. But the wounds of this kind of thing are on the inside and nobody can see them. And people think you're crazy or that you've lost your mind or it's not important or just get over it or, so I think the part of the suffering of it is that there's so little way to communicate to others about what's happening. And so I just, once we've had some experience like it, we can hear it, the whole resonance that we pick up when somebody's trying to tell us something is different. But I just encourage people to know that when somebody is trying to communicate from this deep place, that you can't see what is hurting them, but you really, really need to like open your heart and mind to listen deeply. And I didn't have much of that in my life. Even the therapist that I had at the time, I found out was in Illinois.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because he was actually treating someone else that was involved in it. So he knew all about it, but I'd been sitting in his office for 2 years.
Oh.
It was just like, so, I was really alone for a while. It was really, really wild. But
and often you can't put, like what you were saying about where people, when you feel lonely and you're in this space, you can't put language to how you feel what's going on either. Like you can't communicate it. You feel so confused and in this pit of just doom. But you can't walk around saying, oh, I just feel like doom or dark. Like you can't language it.
Thank you for saying that. That's exactly right. We have no concepts for it. There's not a concept that you can get in your mind that explains what all of this dissolution is about. And anytime you get a concept, it dissolves again.
Right.
It won't stick. It won't stay because the transformation is taking place at such a pace that that it's really hard to find words or concepts or any kind of way to communicate it. But somehow, the times when someone was able to be present to me where I was were the things that really helped me survive it.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I love the fact that, as you said, you were guided to refer back to that dream as a way of just giving you some form of comfort to say, I know this is really awful, but look, you were already planning this in some way. There was this process that just to kind of give you some little line of, okay, this was meant to happen to me, because that can be terrifying if you don't think of things that way.
Right. And that is the salvation, I think, for anyone going through these deep wounding processes, is to recognize that it is a deep soul process that has value beyond anything that we can yet know. And somehow I was granted, by running into that dream and just however I was being worked with by the guides and spirits that were working with me, I did have that trust all through it. I was really blessed to have that. And that is so important, just getting through it with the sense of meaning, sense of destiny, sense of purpose. And so I think it's so important. So, I just appeal to anyone who is listening, who's maybe, entering into a phase like this or deep in it, or even just past it, to really embrace that sense of.
And they may not be at a place where they see that yet, but it will be there. And I guess that's where, for me, having an experience myself where you finally see that kind of, I often call it a tapestry, that you feel like you're watching it being created. And at some point, there'll be this one stitch, and all of a sudden the picture kind of becomes clearer, and you're like, oh, wow, okay. You just see that one moment that just defined all these other moments, and suddenly there's this picture that makes sense to you, and it kind of helps elevate you out of the spot that you're in when you're in that confusion, or wanting answers, or, you know, feeling alone. So
Yeah, that's a beautiful image for it. That's so beautiful.
yeah, and you never know when that stitch is going to help, you know.
Mhm.
It might be further down the track, but it will happen. It might be a comment, or it might be watching a video, or it might be reading a book, or having some memory. But yeah, to piece that together. So, and as we were saying, you know, the sacredness that comes from these wounds. So I'm wondering, how did that evolve for you?
The working with it. Well, what you're saying there, I just love, and it reminds me of a dream that I had, you know, right at the when I was starting to get my feet back on the ground a little bit. I looked in the mirror in the dream, and it was like boils were erupting, and there was this black shiny matter that was coming, like bursting out. It was like all of a sudden these like holes in my face, and this black matter was coming out of all of these places in my face. And I was just in the dream just sort of darkly fascinated with it. It's like, dang, what is this black? And then, you know, the way Psyche works, I'm so appreciative and so grateful. Like the next day, within the next day or two, I read in one of Jung's writings a quotation from, it was from the Rosarium Philosophorum. I can't say that word. It's an ancient alchemical text, the Rosarium. And it says, when you see your matter going black, rejoice, for that is the beginning of the work.
Oh, I
And
love
so,
that.
you know, having that dream of like my
Yeah.
face erupting in this blackness and not being concerned by it necessarily in the dream, just fascinated. And then it's saying, rejoice, for that is the beginning of the work. Then, yeah, I mean, the pain of it all didn't diminish, but there was some kind of like sense of power and beauty, and purpose, and maybe the word is trust, you know, in it all,
In
you
the
know.
process, trusting it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it destroyed my life as I knew it. You know, I was no longer a minister. Then I didn't have a marriage, and, you know, I had to watch my daughters go through the dissolution of the family that they had known and loved, and that we'd all known and loved. And so it was, you know, it was a painful process, but this sort of sense of just like the divine voice, the divine purpose that was moving through it all. And, you know, when I cried for my daughters to one friend, she said, this was a Jungian analyst, she was so wise, but she said, you can't change the destiny of your children. You know,
Oh,
this is their
wow.
destiny too. I thought, okay, you know,
Yeah.
I couldn't protect them from this. You know,
Yeah.
it's just as much their destiny it is as it
Wow.
is mine. And so, you know, you can certainly do everything you can to be of love and grace and support and kindness and goodness in their lives, but you can't change it for them. So, yeah, I went through a lot of that. But, you know, what really helped me, Charlie, was recognizing, and I recognized soon, that we each in our own ways who go through a process like this, it's because collectively we're all destined to do this. It's time. It's like the whole transformation of consciousness, human consciousness, that needs to take place now, you know. And it's the environmental crisis was to me at the time, and still is, the most urgent signal that the transformation of consciousness is necessary for right now. And so I felt like, okay, everybody, we're all going to go through this together. And each of us who have found some sense of how to deal with it, how to face it, how to trust ourselves through it, how to hold ourselves together, how to hold each other together through it, are going to be part of the support system and the healing for when we go through this collectively. And as we go through it collectively, which I think we're doing now, you know, I really think it is a call. And that was one of Jung's you know, like his deepest concerns, he said that the power of our own destruction, the destruction of this earth as we know it, is now in the hands of humans. We have the power now to make or destroy ourselves. And he was referring, I think, in that to the nuclear capabilities that we have. But also he was very, very concerned about the environmental situation that he knew. He died in 1950, and he was already quite aware that we were headed for, you know, some kind of really critical moment if we didn't wake up. And it's the humans that have to wake up. This is like that. And so, you know, his work was saying we need psychology, that the whole destiny of Earth hangs on a very thin thread, and that thread is the psyche of mankind. And so, you know, it's us that need to change, and we need psychology to change. So I was glad to be studying psychology while I was going through something. So, yeah. And that was part of the grace of it too, was the fact that I happened to be in a program, you know, that was a container for me during that period of my life that was so shocking and difficult.
I'm thinking, what, you know, for people listening and resonating, and perhaps knowing other people going through this kind of stuff, what can we recommend?
So many different things here. One of them is to recognize that it is a very individual journey. And so for us to each find our own sort of like, it's almost like if we read too many books or do too many things, it could be taking us away from what is the deep message in our own dreams. So one of the things I would say is like really listen to your own dreaming. Be very in touch with what your own psyche is delivering to you. And then another thing is certainly that that human, you know, like collective support is, you know, so however we can be present to one another in the deep empathic sort of conversation of what it's going to take. And I, you know, that there is a wisdom that is born from all of this, you know, that you can get in no other way. And so when we are able to like embrace the fact that we are wiser now, and also, you know, when you see somebody who's been through something huge like that, there's an authority that they have. I remember one gentleman saying to me once that he adored his wife, but he said she's never been through anything hard, and I almost can't relate to it. Her life has just been easy. And I think some people's astrology, you know, they don't need to. There's not any problem with that. But you know, there is sort of a certain destiny and authority that one achieves. Like this process that went on in me was bigger than any PhD or any sort of ordination certificate or anything else that could have provided me with a sense of just like comprehension of finding your own sense of purpose and trust in the process, and then supporting one another in it. That I think is crucial. And then certainly, like after we are done with this interview, I'm going off to a women's circle, and we really support one another in our deep processes in that circle. You know, so anytime you can get the kind of support that something like that provides is helpful. And then, you know, sometimes reading is helpful, sometimes it's not. But when it's helpful, it is really helpful. Right. So just exploring the literature that makes you feel so not alone in the world, or like there's something wrong with you, that this should be happening to you. We're all like destined to go through it. But, you know, I saw a bumper sticker the other day that I really loved. And it says, not to ruin the ending, but everything's going to turn out okay.
I love that.
Isn't that good? Yeah. We don't want to tell ourselves or each other that too soon, because it can sound dismissive, but right. In a deep way, to know that nature prevails and the heart prevails and the starry cosmos, you know, has its way of working with us through it all, you know, and elevating us and increasing our, you know, just sort of the frequency of just trust and love and the viability of our human nature that can get in touch with our spiritual nature and work together in those ways. So, it just takes gathering and support to work with that. I brought this quote from a good friend of mine. Her name's Veronica Goodchild. And she wrote this beautiful book called Songlines of the Soul. That's one if anybody's looking for something to read. Her book is so beautiful. But I pulled this out of her writing. She says, during this process of recovering our own divine heritage, it is vital to understand that the dark night of the soul, in whatever form it comes, is paradoxically a highly developed state of consciousness, very close to the divine. The ability to completely surrender to one's own suffering consciously is often the prerequisite for grace and disclosures of the sacred.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, didn't she put it beautifully there? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So just when you feel like you've just been like abandoned by all gods and loved ones, is to recognize that these are the times when you're closest to the divine.
Absolutely. This is your moment.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And we're recording this right in the the world, right leading up to Easter, where there's the story of, what happened to this figure called Jesus, and that, like had to go through a lot before the resurrection happened. And there's something of that story that resonates, that with a certain truth for all of us. So
absolutely. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm so honored that you've shared this story with us because it's a very powerful medicine story.
Thank you for the opportunity. I haven't told this story in years. Maybe
wow.
a really long time. I'm sort of, it's always there, but, it hasn't been at the forefront of what my teaching. So I'm really was excited when you're talking about this. I thought these stories need to be told. They need to be like held together. We need to hold each other together in the stories. Yeah,
absolutely. And that helps with that support that you were saying is so important. And that's why, this message that needed to be brought through with this summit, I was very called to say it. And I think that's because, as you said, this is the time. People are experiencing this, and that feeling of being alone and lost and why is this happening to me is not helpful. And that's why we want to, share these stories that we've been through these things and they're powerful moments. So I really appreciate it.
And that there's life on the other side, inside it and all through, that there's this destiny at work that is always beautiful. It's always got some great, as Veronica said so beautifully, prerequisites.
And as you said, you changed afterwards. You're such a different person that you can't express that change. You just see things differently. You feel different. You have a different strength or courage about you. And
it's like that eclipse, or it eclipses your whole former point of view, your whole former frame of reference. All of that is gone, and there's a whole new point of view and whole new frame of reference. And the thing to recognize about this too, Charlie, is that it's not one and done. Oh my gosh, it's like we're going through it all the time, at different levels and different areas of our life. Sometimes in our personal life, sometimes in our professional life, sometimes in our interior spiritual, life. But it's always going on. So this is, cyclic. The alchemy is always taking place, and the transformation of our consciousness is an ongoing, evolving, never-ending, always beautiful process. So, and generally there's suffering involved, and there's some kind of dignity and beauty in the suffering too. Yeah.
Beautiful. I feel like we could talk about this for a long time, but I am conscious of the time, and I want you to be able to talk about your free gift that you have for everyone, which would be amazing, and any services and things that you can share with people, how they can find you, etc.
Yes. So the free gift that I am offering to everyone is my beautiful friend and colleague, Jocelyn Starfeather, and I started a monthly dream symposium. We've been doing it every month for about 7 years now. So every month we gather people from all over the world, and we do this like Indigenous people do, you know, they still do and have done for millennia, is getting together and listening to the dreams of the community. And from the dreaming of the community, everyone gets guidance, wisdom, you know, insight. And so we decided we wanted to do this, create this possibility for us all to get together and listen to the dreams that are coming through for the people. So please come and try it out if you're interested and curious about getting more sort of in touch with your dreams and in touch with the collective dreaming mind, and, you know, just getting into the space of the dream time with, you know, with other like-minded souls. And you can share your dreams. If you have a dream, you can share, but in any case, you know, just getting and listening to the guidance that's coming through and the conversation that happens is just, it's profound, and it's a beautiful community that takes place there, and everyone is welcome. So
beautiful. That's fantastic. We'll have all the details for that available for everyone. So
yeah, and if people go to my website, TayriaWard.com, I know you'll have that. You can sign up for the Dream Symposium page.
Okay.
Oh, you'll have that link anyway. Yeah. But also on there is, on one of the pages is my dissertation, and it does have a chapter on the Black Sun. Chapter 2 has a, you know, a lengthier writing with more research on the Black Sun. If anybody's interested in that particular sort of subject, the dissertation is there, and you can read that. And then there's on the videos page, lots of videos and things, lots of free stuff.
Yes, lots of free stuff. Fabulous. All right. Well, I highly recommend people to sign up and have a look at your website, access all the freebies, and definitely join in the dream monthly dream one as well. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor listening to your story, and I'm sure there'll be people who completely resonate and appreciate as much as I have. So yeah, thank you again.
It's lovely to meet you, Charlie, and I just ask blessings for everyone in your audience. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tayria.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.